Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Jared here with Xcelencia. We're checking in, doing something a little bit different for this version of Infinite. We've been doing the podcast for a little bit now. I think this is our fourth one. Man, we're humming along with these things, but
Yeah,
decided to do a live session so Xcelencia can break down some of the music and then we can get into it. Man, how you feeling?
good. I'm excited. Yeah, it's the fourth one, and I think that like this is refreshing, right? Because like I've been wanting to do some more of this stuff in studio. Like I think a couple weeks back, I was thinking about doing like a quick little studio tour. So I may be shooting something like that. So I'm excited to kind of open it up for everyone to check it out.
No, yeah, that's dope, man. And I think it'll be fun too because obviously you're breaking down like the different pieces of the song, which um, we do want to get into. And today's a big day for that song in particular too. But we'll get into real with the collab with Harrison. Talk about what's going on today with that because obviously, like I said, it's a big moment for you.
Yeah. So I think it was like last month or so, or maybe a little before that, we got a placement with HBO on the Sweet Life Los Angeles, and they just released the last 3 episodes today, and then I got Real with Harrison on there, and then on this, I think the episode right after, it's another song that I got called Bonko. But Real was the original one that they reached out to me to place on the TV show, so it was perfect because like they go to Mexico, so they needed some like Latin music in the background. They're chilling poolside. And I'm glad they played me like in the transition, so the song just kind of pops out. It's not in the
Oh
background.
yeah, yeah, no, that's perfect because then it stands out even more. So hold on, you had two placements. Is it two separate episodes?
Yeah, two different episodes. I thought it was gonna be the same one, but it's two different episodes. And yeah, it's another song that I actually put out like 2020. So that was like when I actually opened up the studio. Like that's a song I made there, like one of the first ones I made. And they reached out about that one. It's one of my favorites. So I'm glad it's still getting love like 2 years later. Like I feel like that's super cool.
Yeah, man, I remember Bonko too because I have it on one of the playlists, one of the random catalog playlists that I put together. I think it's a dope one too. But yo, congrats! I didn't know you had two of them. I knew about Real, but yeah, it's a good feeling. So like, and then I think you said to me before that they actually timestamp you, so like where in the show you're coming in, right?
Yeah, so for this one I didn't know, so I had to sit through
Uh,
and watch and it was like towards the end, so it was like a very last part. So I had to wait, sit it through, and then the second song, the Banco, it was like so it was like skip intro and then the song pops up. So I was like, yeah, it's
oh.
perfect. Like I can listen to it right away.
When you were at the end, were you getting anxious at all? You're like,
I
where is
was, I
it?
was, I was anxious, man. I was like, 'cause you're like you just never know, right? Like the first placement I got this year, like I already knew like which episode, the time, everything. I had all the
Mm.
details, so I kind of expected it. For this one, I wasn't too sure.
What about Harrison? Like, has he seen it yet? Do you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. I sent him a clip. I recorded it and I sent it to him. And we've been talking back and forth the last, I don't know, like 2 weeks. Like, yo, when is it coming out? Yo, when is like the paperwork, this, that. So we've been
Nice.
like patiently waiting. And I already knew it was like the 18th. They do like the episodes in batches. So they do like two or three at a
Mm.
time. That's why I was like, all right, cool. Instead of like weekly, that's how they kind of do it. So it's pretty
Gotcha.
cool.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really cool, bro. Like, and I know it's got to be a good feeling, especially when they throw in not throw in, but when they pick a second song as well too. So
Yeah,
like,
no,
that's a
that
good
was
feeling.
like caught me off guard, but I was super happy about that too.
Yeah, yeah. So, without further ado, I definitely want you to break it down, and however you want to do it. Like, if you want to go with vocals, if you want to go with the production, whatever order, whatever's easiest for you. And then I know at one point too, if we have time for it, we wanted to chop it up. I know there's been music NFTs have been in the headlines lately, so we can get into that a little bit too if we got time at the end of it. But take it away.
Yeah, for sure. So I can do a little intro to the studio, just kind of show some of my gear. By the way, this studio I built it. I was gonna perform at South by Southwest 2020 headliner. I was excited for that. Obviously, COVID came through. So at the time, it was between opening up the studio, going to South by, like which one. So as soon as that happened, like I just went all in, and then I built out the studio. I had some of this gear from before, pretty much. So I got my interface. It's an Antelope. That's what I use basically for like recording, and like that's the main hub right here. I have a microphone. It's a copper. It's a Telefunken CU29. I got these monitors here. This one I actually got from a songwriting competition that I did. And I was able to get these. These are Genelecs, and then I got the Dynaudios there. They got a lot of punch, and yeah, that's kind of like the basic setup. But this is what I've had for like since like 2016, by the way. So like a lot of my music is just made, with this gear that you're actually seeing in here. But yeah, like I mostly use Pro Tools for recording, mixing, production. I haven't been producing much lately, but when we do, we use like FL Studio and a little bit in like Pro Tools and stuff like that. So I got the session here. I got it broke down. I got the stems actually. I don't have it like by individual sounds, but like I think it sounds amazing just in groups. Like, so I kind of want to start with like the melodies because I feel like the melodies is like my favorite part of the song, even over like some of the percussion and drums, and like everything has its own like pocket and everything. So I'll just play like a part of the melodies here.
And I wanted to ask too, real quick.
Yeah.
Despite you producing and despite Harrison producing, you said it was somebody else that did this one, right?
So all credit goes to Shine. He's the producer. He's from Argentina. He lives there. Has been there all his life. Super dope producer, Latin Grammy nominated, Billboard charting. He's too humble, so I always like shout him out. But yeah, he's definitely the one that grabbed it and took it to the next level. But I actually mixed it, so like he'll send me like the stems and everything, and I'll go ahead and mix pretty much the vocals, and like he has his own sound, so I don't like have to do much or touch it up too much, but I have to kind of adjust and like do things like that. So like his melody work to me is like one of the best in like reggaeton in my opinion. So yeah, I'm excited about like showing kind of like his process of it here and like his sound like bare bones, So I could play that real quick. Hold on, I got the vocals there. There you go. Harrison's vocals coming in there. They're not muted, but yeah, that's kind of like the melodies in a group together. Basically, there's a few sound effects in there too, but like I love how he kind of like every sound has its own space, but that at the same time they kind of play together.
Yeah,
and I think it makes for like a real unique sound.
So I'm interested in the order of it. So like when you like, how did it all start to come together? Do you get this first and then you start to ideate on this whole thing, or like did you already have like kind of the song in mind, and how did that go? What was the order of that?
Yeah, so I had basically like a reference track. So it was just an instrumental, but it wasn't this one. It was another one. And that's what I used for basically the inspiration. So like my process for that song, that was like last summer. And it was just, man, it was mostly like off the top. So it was just feeling, it was just vibes. And I just started playing around with a lot of melodies. And that's how I kind of like started building out the song. And I think I mentioned in an earlier space where like the verses were too long. And that's kind of what sparked me when I first met Harrison, like, yo, this would be perfect if I brought someone else on. So the song is not like boring throughout, So
Yeah.
I love the hook. I love the melodies on it. But I was like, it would be dope to have someone on the verse, which at the time I didn't know that he wasn't really singing. He was more like producing. So for this one, I was just like, yo, just do your thing on it. And like that kind of gave the song like a whole different vibe. But yeah, it was basically that. And then once I got his vocals in, I then put everything together, and then that's when I sent it out to Shine. And Shine came in and he basically made the entire like music that from scratch. So he took a little influence from the original, but he turned it into something else. Like I feel like the other one was too down tempo, was kind of like down and boring. And he kind of like gave it life. Even like little things like the sound effects, the waves, and like all these different things, like they take you somewhere, right?
There's the water too that you definitely
Right.
you can hear like right at the beginning too, or there's that break, like maybe like 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through where it breaks and you hear the wave sound.
Exactly.
No, that's super interesting. That's like you kind of put it together almost to something else, and then he came back with this, and like it turned into what it is because like it's great. But yeah, what else?
Yeah. So let's see. Let's play the bass track actually, because that one's definitely just soloed here. Let me mute Harrison's part real quick. So yeah, this is like the cleanest that I can make a session, pretty much. So I'll have the tracks and the stems up there, and then the vocals kind of like in this part right there. And I'll try to split it up by like leads, backing, and some of like the ad libs and stuff like that. Typically, I'll have drums first, and that's kind of what I build up upon first. But yeah, let me mute that real quick. It's just a bass track, so this could be just like a little quick play here. Well, this is actually like sub bass, so like it's common in reggaeton. We'll do like an actual like whether it's a bass guitar or a bass sound, but then we'll add a sub bass under that, and then we'll kind of play with it. And that's like really common in reggaeton. It kind of clashes, so you have to play around and be careful with it. So maybe I could just add the drums there, so you guys can hear like how it all plays together. Yeah, so it's just like a lot of percussion, and there's no real like snare in there, but it's kind of like playing with that, you know, like.
Well, even that bass, though, that bass is really subtle, like really, really subtle, you know.
That's kind of the idea with like the sub bass, is to like make it subtle, like, but don't let it eat up. If it's more reggaeton, then like you definitely bring up that sub bass, and it'll really like punch through. You know, that's a big key part of like reggaeton records.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. By the way, just super random note, like the way the screen looks, it's playing from right to left, and so I was like, "Yo, this is really weird."
Yeah, I was confused. I'm over here like, I'm gonna mute it and play it again real quick. Yeah, it looks. But yeah.
No, that's dope. Curious, do you ever like, do you ever hop on? I talked to Dave here and there, and like I know he's like in love with the 808s and stuff like that. You ever get into like that sort of thing?
Like what?
Like get more into the 808s as far as the drums are concerned?
Yeah, I have a few records with like 808s. I think I have like maybe one up on Catalog, I want to say, that plays a bit with like 808s and some like unreleased stuff. but yeah, definitely like I love producing. Like I produce sometimes just for me, for fun, you know, like that's kind of like my thing. Like I'll sample. I got a ton of records I sample from, and like, you know, I'll play around with that. But like a lot of the stuff that you hear from me, it's not like I don't have a lot of trap stuff out, but like unreleased I kind of do. So yeah, it's always like trying to figure out what to put out next and stuff like that. But yeah, I do for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, dude, so yeah, we start with the melodies. You show the bass in there. We got the drums. What's next?
Yeah, so we got vocals, of course. Let's see. Yeah, so as I mentioned, in this bottom part is kind of like where I have the vocals and how I start kind of working it. I'm old school, so like I open up the mix window like on its own. Like typically you'll have people kind of open it up on the side here, and I still do, so I can like quickly do some things. But like the way I learned was like 2 screens back in the day, and I would have this on another one, and like it allows. So I think I got used to that, and that's kind of how I kind of lay out the mix and how I start kind of working with it. And it's mostly in the box. I do have this piece here, which is like a clone of like a famous compressor. And that's kind of like sometimes I'll send the audio in there and out, and like it gives it more warmth, you know, it's like more analog instead of all digital. And it does make a difference, by the way. Like it really does. Like that's kind of one of my little secret tools. It's not much, but it kind of gives it a little oomph.
Yeah, I mean anything with just a little differentiation.
Yeah. I mean, and it took me a while to notice it, but it, you know, it worked. That's how I started. I used to use a lot of analog gear, and then over time, obviously, it's just less expensive to stay, you know, in the box as we say it. But yeah, let me see. I could play Harrison's vocals too. They sound really clean here. That was another thing, like him recording, you know, somewhere else, different mic, different vocal chain, different everything. It was like really big difference. But yeah, I'm gonna play his vocals here.
Get away, baby. Hey. Are you not the one they want to flame me? I don't know them boys, but they me. If they want to take it to me. Come and take me. One beat. Now she wanna vibe with
Then that leads into the hook. Let's see.
Pero cuando sale a bailar, no es que la mira, no la puede tocar. Tanto loco que le quiere tirar. Ella tiene algo que me tiene mal. Pero cuando sales a bailar, no es que la mira, no la pueden tocar. Hay tanto loco que le quiere tirar. Mami tiene algo que me tiene bien mal. Tú tienes algo que me tiene bien mal. ¿Cómo te enseño que todo es real? Toda la noche no te quiero olvidar. Tú eres mía, no te quiero dejar. Tú me conoces muy bien, yo sé.
Yeah, so it's interesting because like I'll usually lay a lot of vocals and then I'll start like when I start mixing, I start kind of taking them out, especially like if they're clashing or it's too much. But like from the get, because I'm in such a creative mode, like I'll just go in like whatever it's asking me to do the song, like I'll go ahead and do it. So harmonies, backing vocals, whatever it may be, I'll just start throwing all that in there.
Well,
So
I think
that's
that
why,
makes a lot of sense though too. Like you put more down and then you condense it from there
for sure.
to
It's
make
a
it
habit,
fit.
right? Like you got to get used to it because sometimes you get attached to the sound and you're kind of like, oh, I like it as is. I don't want to change it. It adds a lot of emotion to it. But sometimes you just gotta like declutter it and kind of clean it up so like the production stands out too, and you're not like in the way, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'll have like leads, I have my backings, clean them up. I got Harrison's verse right here, and then I have some like vocalizing things there. And yeah, mixing them out. You know, I kind of like I have a template chain basically. So as soon as I open up the session, I'm ready to go. But I'll go in there and tweak it, you know, as always. But yeah, that's kind of like the overall session for Real.
Sweet, bro. Yeah, I mean, it came out great. It's interesting to hear you kind of like acapella in there too. I always feel like one of the best experiences at live shows is if they cut the sound on purpose, or if they go to like try to bring somebody off stage or something like that, so they cut the music and then people just keep going acapella. Like sometimes, like that's so much fun to hear and experience.
That's the way to go for sure. It's funny in reggaeton, like we use a lot of loops. So like you'll see in the shows, like they'll start the song out with just like the loop. So it's just like the reggaeton, dembow loop in the bottom, and then they're singing a cappella on top of that, without no melodies or anything. So that's super common, and I think that's fresh because it kind of breaks down the song to like it's like our way of doing an acoustic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, those are fun. And I remember there was one time I saw it was at the Tabernacle here in Atlanta, and it was J Electronica, and they were trying to get him off stage, and they cut off the sound, and he just kept going, and I was like, "Yeah, this is crazy." So
That's dope. That's dope.
But yeah, no, man, I appreciate that, and then congrats, big time on the placements. I know that's a big moment, and so I want to ask.
Like I've been planning syncs. Like I've always pictured a lot of syncs, and until it happened, and then you're like, okay, like I'm making this happen, and like it's funny because I got the songs in like the baseball game too, and that's like all background stuff. But it's cool to get people writing me like, yo, I heard your song in this game, or like, congrats, like little things like that, man. It all compounds, it adds up, and like it kind of goes to show like you got to value your back catalog too. Like, don't feel like your songs are old or outdated. Like there's always like a use for them, like, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to put you on blast too much, but how many times have you watched your scenes since they came out?
I watched it once, but I uploaded a few times already, like to Instagram. So I've rewatched it a few times. I'm like, all right, that's dope. Like making sure the audio doesn't sound too good, but whatever. People get it. They get the point.
Yeah. No. I mean, but that's super dope to show, like, obviously in a show like that. And have you ever had any placements in films too?
Films, not yet. No, not yet. Actually, it's been mostly the TV shows, the game. Yeah, that's it. No film yet.
All good. Well, yeah, man, no, I think that's super dope to be able to break it down like that, even if it is showing right to left. I was like, yo, Xcelencia is on some other shit, bro. He records right to left. I had never seen that.
Yeah. Hopefully next time we can like screen share like what I'm doing on there. If anyone's interested, I could open up more in-depth things, so.
Yeah, it's all good. But now I'm curious too, right? So like obviously we've been hearing a lot about music NFTs in the headlines, and it's more people just, I don't know the best way to put it, maybe talking shit or saying that they don't believe in it or anything like that. How do you feel? I mean, I feel like no news is bad news type of thing, right?
Like bad publicity, right? Like it's
yeah.
good publicity. But for me, man, it's funny because I have a different like Twitter account that I kind of just go on for like more like DeFi stuff and like the other side of crypto, not like creator economy stuff or whatever I'm involved in music. So like to me, it was like I was already seeing these guys kind of calling it out and questioning it and like seeing that. And like I follow a lot of the guys that were like talking shit about it. So like to see it on my like artist timeline, I thought that was kind of dope to me. And I think also like for me, like being in the space for so long, like I can kind of like ignore the noise and just kind of stay focused on like what I'm doing. And then you kind of start realizing like most people come from a different background, not necessarily music, right? They probably never stepped in a studio or they don't really know. Like you can read a headline and think that you know about the music business, but the reality is that if you're not in it, it's a completely different thing. Like, it's like how people like, what was it, like a year or two back, they were saying like artists only get paid 12% from Spotify, but that was because that was due to like their label contract or structure, right? And people kind of like generalize this idea of like everyone's just making 12%. Like that was a thing for a while, like it's like the whole thing of like they read the headline but they don't go in and like read the article, right? And try to understand it. So to me, I think it's a lot of that. I think a lot of it is some of them are like good questions, right? Like, what's the use? Like, what are people doing? How are artists like leveraging the tools and the technology and stuff like that? So I don't think it's like a bad, like, I guess, conversation to have, right? Like, I think skepticism is important. You kind of like learn from both sides. Why not,
Yeah, agreed. Well, also, in like somewhat ironically, like I was saying, like, people say like, oh, I don't believe in music NFTs, like, and it actually makes sales pop off. Like if you see the catalog bot or the sound bot or these different things, and all of a sudden just start selling you. Like, so it's interesting because like, sometimes these conversations from the Kobe's or, these other influencer types in the world actually spreads awareness.
It does.
Because
and I've been saying
like
I feel like music NFTs are like in an awareness phase, not necessarily adoption phase. So like this just adds to that. So it's interesting to see. And I remember like reading this idea of like how in crypto, like there's certain things that are not in the narrative, but they're like kind of a niche, they're kind of like underground. And then eventually they kind of pop off. And that's always happened since like 2017. Like DAOs, like they were talked about, but they weren't really like, in the forefront like that, and then now it's like everything is like DAOs and like all this stuff. And I think with NFTs, it's the same thing, but it is interesting to see how like they understand the art, as an NFT, but not music. I think that's also like really interesting that people don't see any value in music in that regard,
I found that really odd. Like that was my biggest, like, and I had tweeted that. I was like,
right,
if you're an NFT person, like, why does it stop at music? And I
Tour
agree.
Like, it down too. I see you saying that. Tour does it. A few people like are asking that. And he's been, 2020. He was very early, like on Super Rare, so he saw that sort of like shift. And I remember late 2020 was when art was kind of like in the front, and then the PFPs came. So I feel like, for music, it's like, why, like, what, why can't we be valued that way, or like some artists will tweet like, hey, this genre or this song is fine art too, like why not, like the labels place value on catalogs and songs themselves, right? Like they have their methods or whatnot. So I think it's also people not understanding, and a lot of people think it's us giving out or selling our rights when we sell the NFT, like because people say it's digital property rights, but that's at the discretion of the artist or the creator. So it's interesting how people are still kind of learning, but that's a whole part of the process, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you on all of that, and I do find it interesting because, right, like when it comes to music, they're like, well, what rights do I get? I'm like, when you're buying one-of-one art, like, what rights do you get? Like, most of the time, you don't get anything. Like, you get the art. someone else, I think it was actually Rizzle, that had made the point. He's like, there's a whole generation of people that never really collected music, right? Like,
right.
It's always been digital streaming or, ripping songs off of like, Napster or LimeWire, things like that. Meanwhile, like, I remember like buying CDs, and I still have vinyls and things like that too. So I think that's an important thing to consider. Is like a lot of people are like, well, why would I collect music? It's like, well, why not? Like if you like it, if you're a fan of it, like why wouldn't you?
Like this is like one of my favorite bands in the world, Cultura Profética, their Puerto Rican reggae band. Like this is unopened. It's vinyl. I collected it, but I'll still stream their music, on the go. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It's one of those things, like. So I wish people would kind of like, talk to the artists too, right? Like, I feel like a lot of the conversations were like towards influencers or like the actual platforms. Like, ask the artists, take your time to ask the artists. I think that's also another important part of it.
For sure, I agree. And then, so on top of that, also what I think kind of what sparked it a little bit was people talking about 0% royalties, right? And so they're like, I'll never do 0% royalties, but it's almost when you get like a super strong thing against it, it's like, well, it probably is on the spectrum of use cases. Like there's like this equilibrium of things where you say they'll do 0%, like nobody will ever do 0% royalties. But like we had, just a month or two ago, we had a whole bunch of people touting like you should do free NFTs. Like that's just the other end of the spectrum. Like there's there's the equilibrium where you get both or neither on each side. And so I don't know. I find it really interesting. Like, well, we won't do 0% royalties. Well, in that case, you would expect the premium of it to go up. So you just charge a lot more for whatever it is that you're selling, right? So
right.
I don't know. It's very interesting that everybody's so closed off to it, yet we're supposed to be like this revolutionary thing going on right now.
100%, yeah. And it's like, and another thing is like a lot of this, maybe not like tokenizing music, but the conversation's been around since like 2015, 2016. About how to use blockchain technology and smart contracts to basically disrupt like the music supply chain. So like it's not really like a new thing. I guess it's just kind of new in like the narrative sense. Crypto's all narratives, right? Like it was metaverse and gaming like towards the end of last year, like stuff like that. It was Doge at one point. Like, so it's just cyclical in that way. Like I don't know, it's interesting. I want to see where we kind of go from here. But I think artists should kind of like stay true to themselves, like stick to the vision, like don't let the noise kind of steer you in different ways. Like maybe ask some questions yourself, but figure it out, and then just go from there.
Yeah, agreed there too, man. And I do think that it could be anything, right? Like everybody talks about NFT this and blockchain that, and I agree. Obviously, like we're here, right? So like we both deal with it, but at the same time, like it's just a vehicle, right? So like it's in the same sense of like, you hold up the vinyl and you're like, man, you guys got to get this vinyl. And you're like, in the end, it comes down to what's on the vinyl, right? So like you're saying, staying true to it, it comes down to being true to your craft and making dope music, right? Like, because if you make dope music, then the vehicle is just a different way to explore like what optimizes it from a business perspective. But at the same time, you still have to make a great product, right?
Right. Yeah. 100%. Like I've always stayed true to that. Like a lot of people like were telling me like, damn, it's hard to sell physical. It's hard to sell digital download. It's hard to get on playlists. I think I tweeted something like none of those sort of things external stop me from like creating music and then putting it out, and I think that it's the same thing now. Like, even if I don't sell another music NFT, like I'm not going to stop making music. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just going to keep putting it out. There was a point where I was putting out a song a week, and that was like the most fun I ever had. Cause like, I wasn't thinking about sales or numbers or like none of that, I was just like putting music out and I enjoyed it, and I feel like that's part of it,
Yeah. And I agree too. And then I also think that like, so to that same point, you're always going to go back and you specifically, I know that you try to put everything that you can on DSPs, right? So everybody can enjoy it. And there's going to be so many avenues. So like the people that cross over and do Web3 type stuff, maybe they have a multi-pronged approach where they have a zero royalty one or a zero, like a free giveaway one, and then something in between and whatever else comes up. So like, I don't know, there's a million different strategies that can happen. So to your point, right? You're not going to stop making music. So you know,
100%.
why would you just be like, nope, that's the only way we got to do these? Like, that's the only way we sell them. So
Yeah. You know, I've had pressure before. Like people have told me like, oh, be a songwriter because the artist thing is too hard. Like it's too expensive. Like all this stuff. But again, like none of that stopped me. So it's like I'm kind of ignoring the noise and just focusing on the music. And even like when I did the crowdfund, I remember saying like that was like the key, right? Like me putting out the music. I've stuck to the strategy. I haven't changed because of the crash or because of, you know, people talking negatively about, you know, us using music NFTs as a way to grow our careers, you know, outside of the system, you know.
which leads me to another question. What do you think it is? So like, is it? I find it very odd that when we talk about music specifically, and I guess it's not just music, but talking about music specifically, there are people. There's like this stigma about. I've seen it. So when Sound has had a few artists that came over, the one I can remember most notably in my mind was Alexander 23, and when he came over, he tweeted like, "Hey, I'm doing a drop on Sound." Like everybody was like, "No, not you, not NFTs." Like, why do you think that is with music? Like, I find it very odd.
I think it's like that with like any category of like NFTs from what I've seen at least. But I guess because artists do have like that consistent following,
Hmm.
I think that may be the difference there. Like artists are followed for some time, so then when you see someone make the transition, like the fans just kind of like, you know, clash back against it. Luckily, I haven't really had that because it's so new to my kind of genre and my style of music that it's almost like people probably don't even understand what I'm doing. You know, like I've had interest and people have reached out and stuff, but I never got the oh no, not you. I've gotten a few comments here and there like NFTs are lame or like I'm cruel or like stuff like that. But I have seen artists that have a bigger following get like just or gaming. Like, have you seen the gaming? Like,
I
anytime a
haven't.
gaming company announces something like any around NFTs, like forget about it. The comments are just like on like
So that's really, and that's like even more crazy to me because in gaming specifically, like a lot of what you buy, like if you actually transact in like Fortnite and shit like that, technically you are buying an NFT. Like if you buy a skin or like
right.
in a CS:GO, like if you buy a gun, like technically that is an NFT. So
Right. It's a collectible. It's a digital collectible. You're kind of renting it, even though you're buying it in a way. I don't know how it really works, but yeah.
well, and I think though the difference is right. So like if the game goes away,
Mhm.
like your shit's just gone.
Right.
Whereas with these, like, you know, even if you stopped making music, I still have your song, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. I
so
think it's like I was thinking about it too. I'm like, I think there's still this assumption that artists are still dumb. Like I feel that energy sometimes, and I'm like, you know, like you guys got to understand. Like a lot of us have been in the game for a while, right? Like we've learned the business, the ins, the outs, and all that stuff. So like we're conscious of a lot of things and we're aware of a lot of them, a lot of our decisions, you know. So yeah, I think it's that too. It's just people think that we're doing this because we're desperate or because we're like starving or something, like the starving artist thing.
mm,
I think that's another sort of vibe that I get from people attacking music and music NFTs. Some people were saying like, oh, like that's the worst career field you can pick. That's on them. That's their decision that they're starving artists or stuff like that. Like I saw some of those comments kind of leak out during this like that weekend, you know. So I think that's another thing in play. I don't know.
yeah, it's you know everyone's on their high horse too. So
Yeah.
it's also funny though too, right? Because you give people access to trade or to invest, and somebody goes and does it successfully or unsuccessfully, and then they'll tell people like, "Oh yeah, I invest." And it's the same thing with music or photography. Like someone sings a song, they're like, "Oh yeah, I make music," or "Oh, you know, I'm a photographer," and things like that. So everybody feels like if they dabble in it for like, I don't know, a month or something like that, then all of a sudden they're an expert and they can tell you what you can and can't do. Meanwhile, like people go to school for this, people have entire careers for this, and you think you could dabble in it in a month and then be like, bad career choice, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, it's happened to me. I felt the tension before, like, because I'm an artist that kind of like, you know, I kind of have my own label and I kind of do that thing. And like, I've been on calls where you kind of feel that tension of like, where's your manager? You know, like, who's
Mm,
representing you? Like, why are you speaking type? You know, I've gotten that before, right? Like, I've gotten people ask me, hey, is your manager going to be joining this call? And I'm kind of like, hey, I don't have a manager. Like, like you offered, like, it's me, right? Like, I don't have it all figured out, but like, you know, I really do this, right? Like, it's like full time, 100%, like running the stack, you know. But yeah, it's interesting.
It's funny to me. That question almost comes off like, "Is your mommy home?" Like,
right? Yeah, it's the same. Like, who's holding your hand throughout this whole process? Like, how are you getting these streams, and how are you selling NFTs? Like, who's behind you? I've gotten that as well too. I'm like, somebody said, who's the team behind you helping you in NFTs? And I'm like, I mean, maybe the people collecting, but like outside of that, it was my decision to kind of tap into the space and you know, grow in here, you know.
And I think that's actually more common too. So I've spoken with like a number of people, and I know Dave does it. I've spoken with Heno, and I know, you know, I asked Heno straight up. I was like, "Are you working with anybody on the Web3 side?" He goes, "No, you know, I got management and stuff like that for like the Web2 side." He goes, "But no, I'm doing all the Web3 stuff myself." So I actually think it's pretty common over here. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I think it's more power to you, right? Because it's a lot of fucking work.
Yeah, and then the people that I've seen, I mean, why I relate to a lot of artists in the space is because they kind of think this in the same way, right? They're kind of entrepreneurial. They're kind of taking control of their lives and their careers, you know. And I feel like this is like a specific class of creators and artists that are tapping into the space, you know, the ones that are here to stay.
Yeah, for sure. And look, if everybody happens to be wrong, right, and then like Web3 and NFTs go away, like if nothing else, like you learned a lot. You made, you know, the fan base grew. You made some money along the way. You made connections along the way. So like, it's not like there's not a whole lot of downside, right? Like there is time spent, but there's not a whole lot of downside to it.
Yeah, I've thought about that of crypto in general. I'm like, the amount of things that I've learned in the last 5 years are like insane. Like I got into things that I never thought I would ever like get into. And I think all those skills, all of that knowledge has set me up in a way where like with or without it, you know, I can continue to grow and experiment and try new things, you know, even outside of my field. Like if I wasn't making music, I would probably be crypto full time, like, you know, working in some, you know, for some protocol or a company. I don't know. Something.
Full DJing, bro.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah. But music, you know, I was, you know, can't leave it, man. I just can't.
Well, we don't want you to either, man. You make good music, so don't go away. Well, all right, bro. Well, I think I know we obviously we're live and whatnot. We'll talk to Jackie here too, but we had mentioned that somebody tuning in would be the lucky winner of an NFT, and you said it was a sample pack, right?
Yeah, so I got a sample pack. So anyone that's watching or anyone that attended, if we can, like, if you guys help me out with that, figure out who was here. I've been checking out. I've been like, you know, on here. I have the sample pack for real. So it's like broken down, like kicks, you know, snares, like, you know, drums, melodies, effects, everything. And you got access to that royalty free 100%. And you can use it in your NFTs as well. You know, like we're not gonna, you know, stop anyone from
That's
using
amazing.
it. Yeah, for
That's
sure.
amazing.
I love the sample pack, by the way. It's super clean. It's fresh. Like you'll definitely find something in there.
Nice, cool. So what we'll do is we'll tally it up. We'll probably do like a little, you know, the wheel spin. You know how that goes, and then and we'll see who gets it, and then we'll see if we get something out of it too. Like, you know, so maybe somebody can make something dope on top of it, type of thing. So
yeah, that could be the next thing. We can try to hype everyone up to actually use it. Use a sample.
Exactly. Well, all right, bro. Well, I guess we'll sign out here. You got anything coming up in the next 2 weeks that you want us to be aware of?
Man, I'm trying to figure out my next drop. I have like 5 songs left on the Infinite project. So yeah, I'm figuring out which one's the next one. How am I gonna put it out? Like all that stuff, like the fun part of figuring it out. But yeah, stay tuned for that. I'll definitely keep everyone posted on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. As always, good convos. Love watching the breakdown of it. Maybe that'll be a thing. Maybe that'll be a thing.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. And I've been wanting to do that more. So definitely we can do it again.
And well, we appreciate you. And until next time.
All right. Thank you. See y'all later.